Hello. This week in the Torah, we are reading the Parsha of Noah, or the part of the Torah that has to do with Noah and his family. And we know Noah and his family, it's a very famous story. They survive this flood that God sends to engulf and destroy the entire world. And Noah and his family survive that. They're deemed worthy of that. And a lot of the Parsha obviously has to do with them and their trials and travails of being on the boat and all that stuff. And it's really interesting. It's really great. But there's this one line that comes pretty early on. And it's a line that gives us some insight into God's mindset, what God is thinking about, what God's feeling. And every year when we read Noah, I always kind of stop and think about that line because it's so interesting to me. We so rarely kind of get that insight into how God thinks and feels. We hear God's voice and we see God's actions, but to know what God's thinking, what God's feeling, that's very rare. And that comes up in the Parsha of Noah. And like I said, I always stop and think about it. And this year specifically, though, that line, what God's feeling, what God's thinking, brought a whole new meaning because of this year. So I hope you'll join me when I give a sermon about that on Friday night. You can also join us on Saturday morning when Rabbi Morgan is giving one of his wonderful Divrei Torah. And so we hope you'll join us Friday evening, Saturday morning, virtually, or if you've already registered, in person. We wish you an early Shabbat Shalom.